questions? Gordon. I'm just going to mute you, Jimmy.
Help. I'm snagged on a branch half a mile back and I can't catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So if Sat is the very definition of that which isn't an object, isn't perceived and isn't changed, isn't changing, that Sat comes along with Chit and Ananda. They're a package. So feeling happy would be a happiness. If Ananda is happiness, then happiness isn't an object.
That's correct.
So it's not possible to feel happy. There is, because you used the phrase feeling happy and emotions in the same context. And I think that's commonly in popular culture, that's those words, the words emotion and feelings are interchangeable.
Yes. So have you got a copy of Who Am I to hand? Because if so, I'd like you to read out the introductory paragraph. I'm going to get some water.
The paragraph before the first verse, as
Yes.
all living beings.
Yes, please.
As all living beings desire to be happy always, without misery, as in the case of everyone, there is observed supreme love for one's self. And as happiness alone is the cause for love, in order to gain that happiness, which is one's nature, and which is experienced in the state of deep sleep.
Stop. Read that last bit again, please.
In order to gain that happiness, which is one's nature, and which is experienced in the state of deep sleep.
That's it. That's happiness. It's experienced in the state of deep sleep. Is there any experience in deep sleep? The answer is no. Experience means objects. Experience means experience of objects. Yeah. If there's experience of objects in deep sleep, then it cannot be deep sleep. It must either be dream or waking by definition. Make sense? Deep sleep is when there's no waking state and no dream, no objects appearing. That's the definition of deep sleep. Deep sleep means dreamless sleep. Yeah. If there's an experience in deep sleep, that's dream. So it's not deep sleep. Read that last phrase again, please.
In order to gain that happiness, which is one's nature, and which is experienced in the state of deep sleep.
Yeah, so Bhagavan though has written that happiness is experienced in the state of deep sleep. Yeah, because he's using that word experience, meaning deep sleep is of the nature of happiness. Deep sleep is actually the self. True happiness is not a feeling and not an experience. Happiness is the nature of the self. If you let go of all, I often say be happy, don't I? This gets rid of tamas. When you're purified of tamas, you'll find what happens is you naturally let go of happiness as well. And then you start going towards the subject. As you go towards the subject, you'll experience the bliss of the self, which is happiness, but it's not an emotion. It's not a feeling. It's not an experience. The
So
self is not an experience. We talk about experiencing the self, but it's not an action. It's not actually an experience because it's not an object. We talk about knowing the self, but it's not actually knowledge, which is in the mind. Knowledge is actually a type of experience. If you know something, like if you know the capital of France is Paris, that's an experience of this particular thought. So we talk about knowing the self, we talk about experiencing the self, but actually it's beyond knowledge and experience. It's beyond, Ananda is actually beyond emotion. But the happiness is the nearest we come to it. So it's a pointer. I'll come to you in a moment, Ray. I just want to check Gordon, how he's doing on this snagged branch of his. If he's caught up or not.
yeah, I do wish there wasn't, multiple conflicting definitions for the same word. I guess that's Maya for you.
Excuse me. Yes, of course. The problem is the self, the subject, truly speaking, even Sat Chit Ananda, it doesn't apply. Even saying subject, these are all pointers for the jiva. These are all pointers for the jiva. These are all parts of the teaching. The subject. In the self, there is no subject, object. Yeah, there's no happiness, sadness. There's no consciousness, unconsciousness. There's no being, doing, right? There's no Sat, Chit, Ananda, or Asat, Achit, or whatever the opposite of Ananda, Dukkha, Ananda. There's no, Dukkha means suffering. These are pointers in language. These are very good words and pointers for us, for the jiva, for the ego, for the separate person. But even these disappear in the self. I think actually our friend Lakshmana Sama writes about this in Sri Ramana Paravidyopanishad. I believe he writes about this in some, he talks about how the true Ananda is not mere happiness as an emotion. And I think he talks about Sat Chit Ananda as well. I think, and Bhagavan explains in places, I can't remember where, he explains that Sat, Chit, Ananda do not truly describe the self because the self is beyond all qualities and cannot be described. But when we say the self is Sat, what we really mean is that it's not Asat. Meaning when we say the self is beingness, what we really mean is that it doesn't not exist. It does exist. When we say it's chit, we mean it's not unconscious. And when we say ananda, we mean it's no suffering. The highest we can really describe these things are negatively, negative terms. The self or the subject is not the nature of non-being. It's not the nature of unconsciousness, and it's not the nature of suffering. So we say Sat, Chit, Ananda, which is a very helpful pointer for the ego, for the jiva. The ego needs to go towards something. So we direct it towards the subject. And there it dissolves into its into its true self. When you discover the true self, then there's no subject either. This is why they say the self is, in the self, they say there's no realization, no liberation even in the self. Because the concept of liberation and bondage doesn't appear anymore. There's no concept of liberation. When there's no mind, there's no concept of anything. Is that helpful at all, or is that unhelpful? Does that make sense?
Well, strictly speaking, no. I need that emoji with the brain. I think
I'll leave it there with you for now, Gordon.
yeah.
Think about what I've said and just have a mull over that.